Hi, this is Matt Dana of Dana Whiting Law. We do podcasts on estate planning. This is part of our series. Today I thought it'd be interesting just to take a time and step back a minute and talk about some interesting stories I've been involved with in estate planning. And hopefully from these stories you'll learn the importance of why we need to plan and what happens when you don't plan. But one story that comes to mind happened maybe 10, 15 years ago, but it really stands out in my mind as a real tragedy. But we were contacted by a young lady who, her husband had died in a motorcycle accident over the weekend. And she was quite concerned because although they talked about for a lot of years of the need of doing a will, they procrastinated and the husband never did a will. And so obviously this lady's very concerned, but she's optimistic that she thinks because she's the surviving spouse, everything's going to come to her and everything's going to be fine. But what she didn't understand is Arizona law and what happens if a person dies without a will. Our Arizona statutes provide a will for you. We call it intestate succession. And so a person that dies without a will, we've got this state will for you. The state will says that if you have children of a prior marriage and you're married and you die without a will, half of your estate goes to your kids of the prior marriage, half the estate goes to your spouse. So when I tell that to this grieving, surviving spouse, I mean, she's devastated because her husband, that she'd been married to for maybe 10 years or more, her husband had kids of a prior marriage. She claims that they've never been part of the guy's life. He doesn't even know where they are. She doesn't even know where they are. She doesn't know if they're still alive, doesn't know if they exist. But now, you know, you've got a duty to go out there and find these kids, and they're going to get half of this estate. Well, as it turned out, you know, the lady hired us. We're her counsel and we're her legal team, and she tells us that he has no kids, and that you know, that she's looked and she doesn't want us to look, and she's our client, and take her word for it that there are no kids. And so she essentially wants us to you know, probate this will as if he doesn't have any kids. But you know, the way the story ends, I'm not going to go through the complete ending to protect the innocent, but here's a case where, first of all, how much easier would it have been if the guy had done a will that says, on my death, I gave everything to my wife. Been nice and simple. Another thing from the story I think we need to learn is that just because you're a surviving spouse doesn't mean that when your husband dies, you're going to inherit everything. It's going to depend on a lot of different factors. And in prior podcasts, we've always talked about buckets of assets, and I want to talk about that again in this podcast because I think it's important. When it comes to estate planning, everybody needs to understand that there's 4 or 5 different buckets of assets that pass differently to your loved ones depending on what their asset class is. And we know that if you have a life insurance policy that says, on my death, I want the life insurance policy to go to my son Joey, but you have a will that says everything you own you want to go to your daughter Susie, and you die, who gets the life insurance policy? Well, life insurance, annuities, IRAs, they're all controlled by a beneficiary form. It doesn't matter what the will says. Unless you don't have a beneficiary. There are times people have life insurance and they don't designate a beneficiary. They never get around to it. Then they die. What's going to happen? That would probably be paid into the will and into the estate and go according to the will. But other buckets of assets would be like anything that you create a right of survivorship feature, like Matt and Nancy Dana, husband and wife, rights of survivorship. I die, that would go to Nancy. The will is actually the catch-all for anything and everything that doesn't fall in these other buckets. But this case that I'm talking about illustrates that if you don't have a will, chances are the property's not going to pass according to your wishes. So go to my website if you want more articles on the topic, danawhitinglaw.com. Email me directly if you have any questions, and certainly we're to help. Thank you. This is Matt Dana.